In the late 1950s, before there were likes, shares, or viral clips, there was a simpler currency of fame, the handwritten letter. For American Bandstand dancers, fan mail wasn't just an accessory to stardom, it was the very heartbeat of their popularity. Every afternoon, after the music stopped and the cameras went dark, the studio would be met with bulging mailbags, each envelope carrying the excitement of a teenager who felt a personal connection to the faces they saw on screen. These letters told stories of admiration and longing, of friendships imagined and dreams confessed. Some envelopes were plain and hurriedly scribbled, others carefully decorated, sprayed with perfume, or stuffed with small keepsakes meant to stand out in the crowd. For the dancers, the sheer volume of mail could be overwhelming, yet it was also intoxicating. Every stack of letters reminded them that they weren't just moving to music, they were moving hearts across the nation. And so the question remains, which dancers received the most? The answers may surprise you. At number 5 is Kenny Rossi, a dancer whose charm never shouted but quietly lingered with audiences long after the music ended. Unlike some of the flashier regulars, Kenny's appeal came from a subtle confidence and a warm smile that made him feel familiar, almost like the boy who might sit next to you in class. That relatability struck a chord with viewers, and the evidence came in the form of letters, sometimes stacks of them, arriving week after week. Years later, Kenny recalled that during his time on Bandstand, he received thousands of letters, a memory that underlined just how deeply fans felt connected to him. He often said his jacket pockets were rarely empty because someone had slipped in a folded note or he'd tucked away a letter he wanted to read on the train home. For him, the correspondence wasn't background noise. It was proof that teenagers from across the country were watching closely, rooting for him, and eager to make sure he knew it. One story in particular captured the devotion of his fans. On his 15th birthday, instead of a handful of cards, Kenny was showered with more than 150 pairs of cufflinks sent through the mail. Each package was carefully wrapped, each gift chosen as if to mark the passage of a boy into young manhood. The gesture was both extravagant and touching, showing the creative lengths to which fans would go to express their affection. In those cufflinks lay more than style. They carried the message that he mattered deeply to strangers who had never met him, but who felt they knew him through the glow of a black and white screen. For a teenager, the flood of mail was both exhilarating and daunting. Letters arrived written in looping cursive, often decorated with hearts or lipstick kisses, filled with stories about school dances, broken hearts, and even requests for advice. Some asked about his favorite songs, others dreamed about meeting him in person. Many were simply short notes saying, "We watch you every day." For Kenny, they became tangible reminders that what he did on the dance floor carried weight far beyond the studio. His fan mail revealed something larger than personal popularity. It showed how American Bandstand itself blurred the boundaries between performer and viewer. Fans didn't just observe, they reached out, believing that through pen and paper they could be part of the story. Kenny Rossi's place at number 5 is a testament to that quiet bond. Proof that even without dazzling theatrics, a dancer could inspire thousands to write, share, and connect in ways that defined an era. At number 4 is Bob Clayton, a dancer whose steady presence and polished style made him one of the most admired young men on American Bandstand. If Kenny Rossi's fan mail spoke to quiet relatability, Bob's letters revealed something broader, the excitement of watching a boy who embodied the ideal teen idol. With his clean-cut looks and graceful movements, Bob was instantly recognizable, and the envelopes that filled the studio mailroom testified to his rising status. The most powerful display of his popularity came during the 1957 Jitterbug contest, when Bob and his partner Justine Carelli captured the nation's attention. Viewers were asked to vote by sending in ballots through the mail, and the response was overwhelming. More than 1 million envelopes poured in. When the dust settled, Bob and Justine were crowned champions, thanks not only to their skill on the dance floor, but also to the extraordinary devotion of fans willing to put pen to paper. The contest became a cultural moment, and Bob's name, often written in bold letters on the front of envelopes, was suddenly part of a phenomenon that stretched across America. Beyond contests, Bob's personal fan mail painted a vivid picture of how deeply he resonated with audiences. Teenagers wrote about his smile, his sense of rhythm, and the way he carried himself with calm assurance. Parents even sent letters praising his manners and wholesome image, seeing him as the kind of boy they would welcome into their homes. This combination of teenage admiration and adult approval was rare, and it elevated Bob into a category few others could claim. But with that admiration came pressure. Letters often arrived with requests for autographs, invitations to local dances, and even bold suggestions that he and Justine should someday marry. Fan magazines amplified this by regularly printing their photographs together, reinforcing the idea that they were Bandstand's golden couple. For Bob, still a teenager navigating school and ordinary life, the responsibility of living up to such expectations could be heavy. Yet he handled the attention with poise, never dismissing the affection sent his way. There are stories of Bob walking away from the studio with stacks of envelopes tucked under his arm, smiling at the doodles or lipstick marks left by admirers. Some letters were so detailed they read like personal journals, sharing family struggles, secrets, or dreams with a boy they only knew from a television screen. For many fans, writing to Bob was less about celebrity and more about connection. They believed he would understand. Bob Clayton's placement at number 4 reminds us that fan mail wasn't simply about numbers. It was about the way a dancer could embody both fantasy and reality at once, giving fans someone to admire while also offering them the comfort of familiarity. In every envelope with his name, there was a piece of America searching for reassurance in a world that was rapidly changing. At number 3, we find Justine Carelli, the girl who captured America's imagination with a mixture of grace, poise, and relatability. If Bob Clayton was the steady hand of their celebrated partnership, Justine was its heart. Her presence on American Bandstand was magnetic. Viewers couldn't look away when she appeared on screen. With her dark hair, striking eyes, and elegant movements, she seemed destined for stardom. Yet, what made her so compelling was not just her beauty, but the sense that she could be the girl next door, someone familiar and approachable who happened to be dancing on national television. The 1957 Jitterbug contest provided undeniable evidence of her popularity. Alongside Bob, Justine inspired more than 1 million ballots to flood the mailroom. Teenagers across the country filled out slips of paper, sealed envelopes, and entrusted the postal service with their devotion. When she and Bob were crowned winners, it was not just a triumph of skill, but a testament to the power of fan engagement. Each envelope represented a household where Justine's name was spoken, her image clipped from a magazine, her presence cherished. It was an avalanche of attention that few teenagers in America could imagine, and it cemented her place as one of the most adored figures of the era. But the fan mail didn't stop with contests. Letters addressed to Justine arrived daily, carrying words of admiration and requests for advice. Girls wrote to tell her they copied her hairstyles and dresses, hoping to capture a fraction of her elegance. Boys sent declarations of love, their words bold and earnest in the way only teenagers can be. Many letters treated her as a confidant. Fans shared their secrets, heartbreaks, and dreams with someone they believed understood them. Teen magazines amplified her stardom, often placing her photo on covers or inside spreads. Every publication sparked another wave of mail, with fans eager to respond to her image as if she were writing directly to them. Justine quickly became a style icon, and her influence extended far beyond the studio floor. She shaped the way young people saw themselves, their fashion, and even their relationships. Handling such devotion was no small task for a girl still balancing schoolwork and ordinary teenage life. The mountains of mail could feel overwhelming, but Justine accepted them as a sign of responsibility. She often credited Bob for their success as a team, yet it was clear that her individual magnetism drew an especially intense following. Even decades later, she remembered those letters with fondness, recalling how fans made her feel less like a performer and more like a friend. Justine Carelli's placement at number 3 speaks to the rare combination of glamour and approachability she carried. Her fan mail wasn't just a measure of fame, it was proof that thousands of teenagers felt seen and inspired by her. Each envelope was a love letter to possibility, addressed to the girl who made an entire generation believe in the magic of dance. In the number 2 position is Arlene Sullivan, a dancer whose quiet elegance and genuine warmth made her one of American Bandstand's most beloved stars. While some dancers dazzled with flashy steps or bold personalities, Arlene drew her audience in with a softer kind of charisma. She was approachable, relatable, and radiated a kindness that viewers instantly trusted. That connection translated into an extraordinary volume of fan mail. Reports from the period place her at receiving close to 500 letters a week. The letters came from all directions. Teenage boys confessed their crushes in earnest notes, while girls admired her style and sought advice. They wanted to know how she balanced schoolwork with television appearances, how she managed to look confident on camera while remaining humble, and how she stayed true to herself in the glare of sudden fame. Many treated her like an older sister, sharing secrets and fears, certain that Arlene would understand. The intimacy of those letters said as much about her as it did about the fans. She had the rare ability to make millions feel like she was speaking directly to them. Teachers and parents also took notice. Unlike some teen idols who unsettled adults, Arlene was praised for being the kind of girl who embodied wholesomeness. Mothers wrote to tell her how their daughters saw her as a role model. Fathers wrote to say they were relieved that their children's favorite dancer was someone who carried herself with dignity and grace. The effect was powerful. Arlene wasn't just admired, she was trusted. That trust kept the mailbags full, day after day, week after week. Behind the scenes, her popularity was impossible to ignore. The producers of Bandstand noticed the sheer volume of envelopes with her name and made sure she remained a regular presence on camera. Fan magazines reinforced this image, often printing photos and short features that sparked even more correspondence. Soon, the letters became so frequent that sorting them became a logistical task of its own. For Arlene, the experience was both thrilling and daunting. She often downplayed her fame, describing herself as an ordinary high school girl who loved to dance. But the envelopes told a different story. Each one carried a piece of America's teenage heart, a handwritten reminder that she mattered far beyond the dance floor. Years later, when asked about her time on the show, Arlene frequently mentioned the letters, not as a burden, but as one of her most treasured memories. Her fan mail demonstrated the unique bond she built with the audience. Unlike the dancers whose appeal rested on glamour or spectacle, Arlene's power lay in her authenticity. She was admired not because she seemed larger than life, but because she felt so real. At number 2, her story is a testament to the idea that sometimes the greatest influence comes not from dazzling the crowd, but from quietly winning their trust, one letter at a time. At the very top of the list, in the number 1 spot, is Carole Scaldeferri, later known by her married name, Carole Spada. Among all the dancers who passed through the American Bandstand studio, she stood out not only for her vibrant style and graceful movements, but for the extraordinary devotion she inspired in fans across the nation. Contemporary accounts report that Carole received between 500 and 600 letters every single week, a figure unmatched by any of her peers. For the producers, her mailbag became a weekly reminder of just how powerfully one teenager could connect with an entire generation. Carole's appeal went beyond her looks. She had a lively presence that radiated authenticity. On camera, she appeared joyful, effortless, and entirely genuine, qualities that viewers recognized immediately. To watch her dance was to see someone who seemed to be having fun simply for the love of music, not for attention. That sincerity resonated with fans who picked up their pens to tell her so. The result was an avalanche of letters that filled the studio mailroom and often spilled over into her personal life. The letters themselves were small works of devotion. Many were written in neat cursive, with carefully chosen stationery decorated in pastel colors. Some carried tokens, pressed flowers, small trinkets, or photographs intended to make an impression. Others were filled with teenage confessions, expressions of admiration, and heartfelt stories about daily life. Girls thanked Carole for giving them the confidence to dance at their own school events. Boys wrote about how her smile brightened their afternoons. For many, writing to her was not simply about fandom. It was about reaching out to someone who felt like a trusted friend. The volume of Carole's fan mail did not go unnoticed by the show's staff. Producers recognized that her name appeared on envelopes more often than almost anyone else, and they rewarded her with more on-screen appearances. In that sense, the mail didn't just reflect her popularity, it actively shaped it. The letters became part of the machinery of fame, ensuring that Carole's presence remained central to Bandstand's identity. Yet for all the attention, Carole remained grounded. She appreciated her fans, but never let the flood of letters define her. For her, dancing was still about the joy of the music and the friendships she built on the studio floor. The mail was a bonus, a reminder that what she did resonated far beyond Philadelphia. Carole Scaldeferri's legacy as the most written-to dancer on American Bandstand is not just about numbers. It is about the rare ability to inspire such devotion that hundreds of fans each week took the time to write. Her story proves that in an era before instant communication, the act of sending a letter was powerful enough to elevate an ordinary teenager into an enduring symbol of youth, joy, and connection. By the late 1950s, the mailrooms of American Bandstand had become monuments to teenage devotion. Reports suggest the studio received anywhere from 20,000 to 45,000 letters in an average week, with numbers spiking to well over 150,000 whenever a contest was underway. The sheer logistics of sorting, opening, and cataloging that avalanche was staggering, yet it provided one of the most tangible measures of how deeply the show had embedded itself in American life. For the dancers, fan mail was far more than a sign of popularity. Each envelope was a thread of connection, binding them to teenagers scattered across the country. The letters carried more than admiration. They carried secrets, hopes, and confessions. They were written slowly and thoughtfully, unlike the fleeting messages of today's social media. To hold one was to feel the weight of someone else's emotions pressed onto paper with care. Many dancers remembered saving these notes for years, cherishing them long after their days on television had ended. Fan mail also shaped careers. Carole Scaldeferri's 500-600 letters per week helped secure her status as one of the show's most prominent regulars. Arlene Sullivan's 500 weekly envelopes made her a role model for a generation of teenage girls. Even Kenny Rossi remembered the thrill of carrying letters in his pockets as a daily reminder that he mattered to people far beyond Philadelphia. And then there were stories like Bunny Gibson's. Though she did not appear in our top 5, some sources suggest she received thousands of letters each week, so many that Dick Clark himself once referred to her as a national symbol. Whether or not the exact numbers can ever be confirmed, the legend of her overflowing mailbags has become part of bandstand lore. In the end, the story of fan mail is the story of an era when young people found their collective voice through pen and paper. Those stacks of envelopes represented something more than admiration for dancers. They represented a generation testing its ability to be heard. Every letter that crossed the studio threshold was proof that American teenagers were no longer content to sit quietly. They wanted to participate, to shape culture, and to make sure their voices carried all the way to the national stage. When we look back at the mountains of envelopes that once arrived at the doors of American Bandstand, we see more than a measure of celebrity. We see a generation discovering the power of connection. For the dancers, each letter was a reminder that their steps carried beyond the studio floor into living rooms, schools, and small towns across America. For the fans, the act of writing was an expression of belonging, a way to bridge the gap between ordinary teenagers and the stars who seemed to embody their dreams. From Kenny Rossi's birthday cufflinks to Bob and Justine's million-ballot victory, from Arlene Sullivan's steady flood of letters to Carole Scaldeferri's overwhelming weekly stacks, fan mail became the invisible rhythm that kept the show beating long after the music ended. Even legends like Bunny Gibson remind us how powerful that devotion could be. Today, in an age of instant messages, it may seem distant. But imagine, if you could step back into that time and send one letter sealed with your own words and hopes, who would you write to, and what would you say?